Salams. Welcome to the next episode of the Adam and the Garden Path series. In this episode, we will continue on with our forbidden fruits discussion. Previously, we discussed some physical fruits that people have considered in the past, such as the apple, the pomegranate, the fig, the banana, the wheat plant, fungi. Now, we're moving on and we're considering ourselves and other creatures as living mobile trees or plants, all right? So now, in this conceptualization, this leads to some interesting potential insights. Because remember, the fall is related to the serpent lying to Hawa alayhi salam, to Eve, and telling her that if you eat of this tree, that you will be like gods. And this is one of the oldest lies that the shayateen tell humans, that they can be made into gods by following their path. So, Eve eats of this fruit, and she's attempting to become like a god, perhaps, like a goddess. And then she gives this fruit to Adam alayhi salam, and he also sins, and then they realize that they are naked. They realize, or they begin their descent. They fall from grace, and they are forced into exile out of the garden. So what is the fruit, potentially? Well, let's think about what godhood might mean. To be a god means to have power over others in one conceptualization. To have power over another's life or death, okay? And when we think in these respects, think about what a serpent does. What does a serpent do? Now, serpents, we could say that they're related to eternal life, in certain viewpoints, because they shed their skin, and they're considered to be quite beautiful by many people. They also have the ability, some constrict their prey, and some put venom into their prey. So we've got we've got a number of, a couple major ways that they kill their prey. I think that some serpents are insect eaters, but I'm not aware of any herbivore serpents. They all are predators as far as I'm aware. Although we could look at them as parasites. In another episode, inshallah, we'll discuss some other ways of conceptualizing the animal kingdom, including the reptilian kingdom. So we think about, what do serpents do? They prey upon other creatures. They eat them, all right? So this is a way that they are like gods. They actually take the life of other creatures. They take the life force. They derive energy from it. So imagine Eve, Hawa, alayha salam. She's out in the garden on her own, and she's observing the serpent. And the serpent talks to her. How does the serpent talk to her? Most of the time, we have literalists who view this as almost like a cartoon, where the serpent whispers in her ear, has a conversation. But when we read reality around us, everything will speak to us. Everything communicates. Everything has a message for us if we have eyes to see, ears to hear, and a heart to feel, know, and understand. So she's observing what this creature is speaking to her, and she watches the serpent eat, say, a rodent. Now imagine a rodent is a tree. Imagine it's got its trunk, it's got its limbs. It is a fruit, in fact, of the garden. All creatures are fruits of the garden. So imagine that she actually takes the life of a creature. She eats the creature, some creature, just like the serpent had, and to derive life force from it. Now, by reading the harmony in nature, Allah had communicated that we do not eat other creatures. We must be in harmony with creatures. We were created to be caliphs of the earth. We are not to, like many people falsely conceptualize of humanity as the owners and dominators of creation, of nature. That everything was created for us to own and control and dominate. And some go even further and say humiliate, astaghfirullah. I would say that, in fact, that it is a much healthier view to consider that we are to be protectors, guides, and guardians of all of creation. So, and we do this through observation, through reading reality, through connecting with all of creation through the heart. And Eve, at this point, when she eats this creature, that's a fruit of the garden, it's a fruit of this tree, she begins to know the difference between good and evil. She has behaved as if she is a goddess, as if she has God status to take the life of a creature for her own sustenance, when she has an entire garden where she can derive sustenance from it. And then she gives it to her husband, to Adam, and he also takes from it and eats. Then they start to they perceive reality differently, because once we eat of flesh, then we begin to see things, everything is different from us. And it brings us into a realm of sorrow, potentially. And many early Christians and many people of Bani Israel had realized this, and were thinking about the garden story from Genesis along these lines. And they wanted to re-enter the garden. So to re-enter the garden, then we actually have to take on garden-like behaviors. What are the behaviors of one who re-enters the garden? How do we walk with Allah in the golden hour? Well, first off, everything is kun infused. So we have to be aware of the divine vibration, the glory of Allah all around us and through us. For we are nearer to you than your jugular vein. Anywhere you turn, there we are. Everything is infused and informed by kun. Kun. So we have to go through a purification process and reharmonize ecosystemically, physically, bodily. And we go through this purification process, and I call it cleaning our clay, washing our water. It's a very funny way of thinking about it. But many people, many ascetics in the past have given up eating of flesh in order to break their nefs. And the nefs that incites to selfish expression, the nefs that incites to evil. And evil is disharmonious. Anything that is evil brings disharmony to body and mind, to self and to other, to self and to the ecosystems, including other creation, including other human beings. So this is an interesting way of thinking about the eating of flesh, and it relates to Bani Israel. They've come out of slavery and they're longing for flesh pots of Egypt. They would rather go back in slavery to eat creatures. To eat creatures could be seen as behaving as a god. And especially if Allah has granted us everything that we need as far as our nutrition is concerned, why should we need to take the life of a creature, an innocent creature, and especially in an unethical and impure manner, as we see within the industrial meat industry? So anyway, we're not currently discussing the halal and haram issue. We will discuss those in the future, inshallah, from various angles, because it's a very necessary conversation we need to have as humanity, and we'll present it from some different angles. But just consider that we could read the forbidden fruit as actually being eating of creatures and taking their lives. So you could see maybe a rodent. Maybe Eve ate a rodent and took its life force, the same way that a serpent does. And she behaved in a serpentine manner in this sense. So anyway, I will end there on that note, but this is worth sitting with, contemplating, researching further. Remember, we are on the path of truth. And if we are committed to truth seeking, real scholarship is not just transmitting knowledge. Real truth seeking is to process information in a way that is going to be beneficial for the most people possible, beginning with ourselves, to be transformed to transform ourselves through a path of ethics and purity. So until next time, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu.